Steven in Plainview. You're on WNYC with County Executive Laura Curran. Hi, Steven.
Hey, Brian. Hey, County Executive Laura Curran. How are you today?
Hello, Steven from Plainview. I'm fine. How are you?
Doing great. So I attended about 3 of these town hall hearings with the Nassau County Marijuana Task Force.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, didn't see you at any of them.
No, you know what? Actually, Steven, let me just tell you, I made a conscious decision not to appear because I wanted it to be the task force. I didn't want to look like I had my finger on the scale one way or the other, so I decided not to go.
That's fair enough. I guess my first question was how you came to your decision of opting out before the task force released their report this past Friday.
I had been speaking with members of the task force. I've been in constant communication with both of the co-chairs, and also the feedback. So the feedback I got from them synced very closely with the feedback I'd been getting from everyday people as I travel around the county.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
So my other concern was I found that a lot of the reports that they were presenting that you are also referring to that showed traffic safety issues, public safety issues, and stuff and quality of life issues, homelessness increase. A lot of these reports that they were showing us at these hearings weren't peer reviewed, and were kind of like cherry picked data coming from the Rocky High report, the Rocky High Mountain report. That is a pretty biased source to be coming from because their goal is to decrease use of cannabis across the country.
I think, one of the reasons that also led to my decision to opt out is there really is not a lot of conclusive data. You have reports that say it's the best thing in the world, it's going to cure everything, and you have reports that say this is terrible and it's going to be the downfall of civilization. And they all have data to prove it. Because it's not been legal, it's been hard to test it and see what the and legalization, is pretty new in where it's happened. It's too soon to know conclusively the picture that the data paints.
Nikhil in Syosset. Excuse me. You're on WNYC. Hi, Nikhil.
Hi, how are you? I'm very critical of the decision to opt NASA out. We know that this is fundamentally a racial justice issue. The research shows that in Nassau County, non-whites, they make about 30% of the population, yet make up 70% of marijuana arrests. It's not kids in Garden City and Syosset on the North Shore that are, getting arrested for marijuana possession or selling. It's poor black and brown kids in Hempstead and Uniondale. And we know from your election that you are only in your place because black and brown people came out for you. And I've been very, very disappointed in a series of I would consider to be racially discriminatory actions from, keeping ICE at the jail, to opting Nassau County out as a reflection of you not listening to black and brown communities who have been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs and criminal justice policy that criminalizes their communities.
Hi, yes, we've met before. So my goal in my job is to make sure to increase in any way I can the welfare and the health and the safety of our residents. And, you're absolutely right. The way white kids consume marijuana is different from the way children of color, younger people of color do. You're talking about the kids in Garden City. They can go in the basement or, do it inside more safely where, in more poor communities, people are outside doing it, which means they're arrested in larger numbers. And I think that's a huge issue, which is why I think this conversation about decriminalization that was brought up in the task force is incredibly important to continue, especially if it's legal.
Right. Now, Nikhil, let me ask you something. Since you're involved in this issue, and it sounds since the county executive said that you two have met before, that you're active on this issue. She said earlier in the interview that if it's legalized statewide, for recreational use and possession, it still would be legal in Nassau County to own it, to use it in the privacy of your own home. So would that solve the criminal justice issue, in your opinion?
Well, there's 2 points I'd say. One, my understanding is that the bill that's introduced would ban public consumption of marijuana, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's right. It would still be illegal statewide to consume in public, correct?
Right, and which we know the data shows that, as County Executive Curran mentioned, is that African Americans and Latinos are more likely to consume it in public settings rather than the privacy of their own homes. But I think the other point that's important is that imagine if New York City you could buy from a legal dispensary. If you're poor and you're working class and you can't get to the city, the chances are that you're going to continue to buy marijuana on the streets of your neighborhood, and that's going to exacerbate the existing disparities that we see in arrest records for people who are selling. And so I don't think it actually solves the fundamental issue here because we know that whites and blacks and Latinos take marijuana at roughly the same rates, but they are arrested at very different percentages.
Right, and you're saying if the county opts out from sales, it kind of encourages or almost mandates the existence of illegal dealers in the county putting themselves at risk.
Yes.
That's it. And County Executive, we did touch on that before, but go ahead and respond to that one more time.
Well, one point I also want to make, a lot of the social justice arguments might actually work in the city in that communities of color should have a place, should perhaps get preference. Business owners of color perhaps should get preference in getting licenses and that sort of thing. But, in Nassau County, we're still the suburbs, and we found our civic and business leaders in all of our communities, whether they were majority communities, minority communities, all said, we don't want it here. We don't want it being sold out of our storefronts. We don't want it in our downtowns. And it didn't matter what the racial makeup of these communities are. That was something that was overwhelmingly true that the task force found. And so, we're still the suburbs in Nassau. And that it doesn't matter what your racial profile is, what your ethnicity is. People still are looking for that suburban quality of life.
Let me just ask you.